Welcome back to Get Down to Business, the show all about small business, jobs, and entrepreneurship. You can always get on my website, syklein.com. So we are back and talking with the author of Women on Purpose. That's Cindy Watson. Again, founder of Women on Purpose and creator of Art of Feminine Negotiation and Persuasion programs. We're going to talk all about that. I know Cindy is the managing partner of the Watson Palmer Law Firm, and Watson has specialized in social justice law for 30 years, is a TEDx international speaker, award-winning author, master negotiator, and consultant known for a passion, commitment, and ability to inspire. So, Cindy Watson, welcome to the program.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm excited to have this conversation.
Absolutely. So I'm just going to call it what it is, because that's what we do here on Get Down to Business. Throughout history, some people have said that women have been billed as third-rate negotiators. We're taught that negotiating is all about the bark and the bite, that it's a take no prisoners, macho toughness that carries the day. But you've done the research. That may not actually be true. Cindy, let's talk a little bit about it. How did you get interested in this topic, and what did you find out?
Yeah, and I love that you're talking about the elephant in the room, because that was the thing that really inspired me to sort of go down this path. As you mentioned, I've been a social justice attorney for 30 years. And when I started, fresh faced 20-something, right out of law school, it was a very masculine, male-dominated industry at the time. It still is in large part, but particularly in my niche. And I was almost always the only woman. And I looked around, I think like many women do, and thought, geesh, if I'm going to be taken seriously, I need to get scrappier. And I think therein lies and I did. My clients called me the Barracuda for many years, which of course they meant is the highest compliment, but there's a really high cost that comes with that. It starts to affect your personal sense of self, your professional relationships, and ultimately your sense of self. And when I dug into it, the thing that was interesting to me is that, in fact, the key skills that make and mark the most effective negotiators are skills that most people would consider to be feminine or so-called soft skills. And yet we've defined success in negotiation based on this very competitive win-lose model. And I think both men and women, frankly, lose out as a result of that, because we end up stifling the very skills that would actually get us better outcomes, better relationships, better buy-in, all the things we need, both personally and professionally.
Absolutely. I'm chatting with the author of The Art of Feminine Negotiation, How to Get What You Want from the Boardroom to the Bedroom. It's a Wall Street Journal and USA Today bestseller. So Cindy, you've done a lot of this. You've specialized in social justice law for 30 years. You've certainly done your research. So for our listeners, they're shaking their heads and they want to know, what's that simple model that you can share and that can help better negotiated outcomes?
Yeah. And I've got there are a number of models that sort of make up the art of feminine negotiation, programming or system or whatever you want to call it. But the one that first came to light for me was what I call the R-FIT model. So easy for your listeners, simple acronym to remember. What are those key skills that make for the most effective negotiator? So just think AREFIT. You are fit to be a great negotiator. And it just stands for assertiveness, which is the one of the 6 skills that people consider to be a more masculine trait. And I would even disagree with that. I think it's because people confuse assertive with aggressive, and they are not the same thing. Assertiveness just means showing up with confidence. Confidence comes from knowledge. Knowledge comes from preparation. The R is for rapport building, and we do not do that very well in North America in particular. We jump straight to business. So really being intentional about building rapport with the other party will be an absolute game changer in getting those better outcomes. And I don't mean talking about the weather, it's about showing up authentically, really making some human connection with the other party. Be intentional about your pacing and your tone of voice so that, as you could probably tell, I get really passionate and I talk quickly. If I'm negotiating with an introvert, I will slow down my speech. I will match their tone of voice to a certain extent so that I make them comfortable. The E is...
Go ahead.
The E is for empathy. And again, we do not do this well. We show up with so much ego in our negotiations. And the key is to actually surrender ego and make it about the other party. Truly seek to understand what they need, what they want. Listen, engage in what I call elevated active listening. So that's your ARE. And then the F is just flexibility. be flexible. Don't get so attached to getting what you think you want that you're missing out on better opportunities. The I is for intuition, trusting our intuition. And the T is trust. Get really intentional about building trust with the other party and trust yourself as well. That is one simple model. That if you do nothing else, just raising your awareness about showing up to your negotiations and invoke that as part of your prep process, you're going to be ahead of the curve already.
Fantastic. Well, that is certainly a very simple model that folks can pay attention to and really start implementing right away. So I'm curious, what are some of the surprises that people sort of experience the most when they are using your system? What should they be on the lookout for?
Yeah, that's a funny question. I think the thing that surprises people most people come to me obviously and are interested in my programs, enjoy signing up for, coaching or consulting because of the business aspect. They want to increase their voice. They want to be able to get more money. They want to get those better outcomes. And we definitely do that in spades. But I think the thing that surprises them is the impact on their personal relationships, even complicated personal relationships, because all of life is a negotiation and we're not taught to be effective negotiators, whether you're negotiating with your kid, with your intimate partner, with service providers, or those multi-million-dollar deals, even negotiating with ourselves. Every day, we are negotiating with ourselves in a million possible ways from the minute we wake up until we lay our head down on the pillow. So I think that's the thing that surprises people most. Not only do they get more in business, but they find they have better relationships with the people in their personal lives as well.
Okay. Well, again, I'm chatting with Cindy Watson, founder of Women on Purpose, creator of The Art of Feminine Negotiation, which is also the name of her book, The Art of Feminine Negotiation, How to Get What You Want from the Boardroom to the Bedroom. She has the Persuasion programs, which we'll get to in just a moment. So what are some of the biggest mistakes that you see people making in negotiating?
I call it the 7 deadly sins of negotiating. One I've already mentioned, which is ego. We tend to show up wanting to win when we see it as a win-lose. When we see it as having power over the other person, you may get what you think you want in that, but you've probably missed all kinds of opportunities for way longer lasting relationships and better deals in business. The A is that attachment piece again. When we are so wedded to, I want X, you want Y, I need to get my X, that there's a whole range of other options there. And we sometimes either bargain long past the point where it makes sense, or we walk away from a deal that would have been great. Our reactivity, getting too reactive, jumping straight to business instead of building that rapport, and not listening. I mean, truly listening, not waiting for your turn to speak, but actually listening. Lack of clarity about what you want, not just the thing that you think you're negotiating about, but what is the relationship outcome you want as well. And the last 7 deadly sin is integrity. And by that, not only showing up with moral integrity, but also being true to your own values so that you're, based on the Latin term, that, integer, that being whole within yourself. And I think we make that mistake of not doing that when we show up with that win-lose mentality.
Well, that's great. I know you're inspiring a lot of folks with the book and the program in general. So I have to ask on the personal note, what discouraged you the most as you did the research and wrote the book?
I thought I knew a lot about unconscious gender bias and biases generally, but I got to tell you, I was stunned at the level to which it affects how we even show up. They did studies with young women writing their SAT exams where half the group were asked to identify their gender and the other half were just simply check off whether you're male or female in advance of writing your SATs. And in study after study, those young women who were asked to check off their gender consistently actually performed more poorly. And I think we've got to stop the blame game where we're looking at blaming men for sort of oppressing women. I think we need to own both men and women have profound unconscious gender bias that affects how we show up, how we perform, the opportunities that are available. That was the most discouraging thing for me, is how much work we still have to do on that front.
Indeed, we have work ahead, but I know with your Persuasion programs, Art of the Feminine Negotiation, the book, and so much more I know that you have in the works. I know we're moving in the right direction. Really enjoyed our conversation. Again, Cindy Watson. Cindy, I know everybody's going to want to learn more about you and pick up a copy of the book and find out about your other projects. Where can they do that?
Oh, thank you. I love the conversation as well. Great questions, by the way. Artoffemininenegotiation.com is the website, loads of free resources there. And for your listeners, actually, it only comes if you buy the book. But if they go to artoffemininenegotiationbook.com, there's a free workbook, videos, a whole bundle of resources. Happy to offer it to your listeners.
Fantastic. Well, really appreciate you coming on the air and sharing your passion, your expertise with our listeners. And certainly we'll link in the show notes as well, The Art of Feminine Negotiation. I know that this is a research in progress and we'll be following you, Cindy. So thanks so much for joining and sharing your passion. A very quick break here on the show all about small business jobs and entrepreneurship. You can always find my website, syklein.com. And of course, subscribe, rate, review, and share on your favorite podcast app. Just search on Spotify, Apple, Google, wherever podcasts may be found. Just search for Get Down to Business. Again, a quick break, headlines, commercials. We'll be right back on Get Down to Business. Don't touch that dial.